Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And greetings. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and you can always find us at naturalnurse.com. And one of the things that I love to tell you about is that you can join us in person. There are wonderful educational events going on all the time in our local area. If you're listening in Long Island, I know we have lots of online listeners as well. And I would like you to know that coming up right away is something called the Naval Expo. You can find it at navalexpo.com. That's NAVELEXPO.com, because there you can find a beautiful event. They're always coming up very soon, and we actually have one in a couple of weeks. And all kinds of natural providers are there to teach you about the many aspects of natural medicine that you can use for self-care and that you can access for yourself and your family. Natural medicine is becoming more and more popular, and we'll let our guest today tell us why. I will be lecturing at the up-and-coming Naval Expo, and I will be talking about the opioid crisis and how that has snuck into our society and possibly your life, because almost no one has been not touched by that, either yourself or a family member, unfortunately, or someone you know. But also, we all have to deal with pain. So I'll be talking about the non-opioid and non-addictive options for natural pain relief, including CBD. There's a big buzz on that, and I'll be going into that in detail. So definitely check out Naval Expo. Now, in addition, there is a long list of excellent speakers that are going to be at the Naval Expo. And today's guest is our own local and lovely Dr. Dawn Siglain. She is a licensed acupuncturist and a board-certified naturopathic doctor. She is very compassionate, who believes in the body's innate ability to heal itself when treated with nature and understanding. She received a doctoral degree in naturopathic medicine and a master's of science degree in acupuncture, and is highly trained. And actually, she's right here on Long Island at the InnerSourceHealth.com. That's where you can find her. She's at the Inner Source Health Center. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Dawn.
Sure, pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, can I call you Dr. Dawn? How do you pronounce your last name? You say it right for me.
Siglain, but I go by Dr. Dawn. Yep.
Okay, Somehow I thought so, because that's how you look. Let's go back in time a little bit, Dr. Dawn, and what made you be drawn to becoming a naturopathic physician?
Sure. Well, you know, it was a culmination of a bunch of situations that I found myself in, but there was something driving me. There was a force inside of me that always had a feeling that nature was the cure, and that there were simple things that people could always do to bring balance back to themselves. So I went on my own health journey with quite a few things of doing that, and it always came down to that if you catch it early enough, especially that there are beautiful herbs in nature and ways to supplement the body to really provide that healing for yourself. And so I always loved learning more. I was constantly learning more information, and I was just drawn to the natural healing aspect. And it really worked for me. And, you know, this happened also because I had seen, you know, loved ones of mine and close family members who, you know, were treated with pharmaceuticals, you know, and it just had these detrimental effects. And, you know, and particularly with my father having been on medication for his, he had bipolar, and towards the end of his life, you just saw the fire like going out in his eyes, like the shine. His soul was just, you know, he wasn't the same, and that really gets a part of your heart and soul, and as a child, you never forget that. So instead of letting that eat me up, I figured there has to be another way, and I just wanted to figure that out in order to help other people.
So since you brought that up, Why don't you tell me, because that's a complex situation. I've been doing natural medicine literally since 1964. Mm-hmm. And as you know, have written many books on the topic and have had excellent results with many, many patients with all kinds of things. And yet I have to say the psychological issues, anything from bipolar, which on that spectrum, let's say, is not as severe as something like schizophrenia, it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
So how would you help somebody who's suffering with that kind of situation?
Yeah, so it was near and dear to my heart watching my father go through it. But for myself, I had my own issues. I knew that I dealt with depression. I didn't understand it, so I had to work it out for myself. But in the way that I always looked at it was that I had to see my way through it, because when the depression would pass or be lifted, or, I'd find, my own sort of healing, it would be in the rear view mirror, and I learned from it. And there was a growth, through it. So what I like to do with my patients is, it's not like, oh, there's something wrong with you and, we have to fix it. I want to help to see their way through it. And with, supplementation and, providing, I also, in addition to the naturopathic medicine aspect and acupuncture, which helps to move the blood and the chi, and that has such an effect on the meridians and the mental health aspect, is that I also do Reiki, so working on that spiritual component. So I like to meet my patients in Western, Eastern, or spiritual, whatever component suits them. I like to be able to meet them there. We also say we have a bunch of tools in our toolbox to help them through, because it's a really multifaceted way of helping the body heal and bring it back into balance. So it's a very nurturing and compassionate way, because when it comes to the mind, there's a lot of self-talk. I do a series of positive self-talk in the salt cave right around here, and I'm also bringing awareness to that self-talk and, really being gentle on ourselves. And there's also an aspect of understanding yourself, because when it comes to mental wellness and achieving that balance, there's a lot that we're processing all the time, and understanding that can bring new light to it in a way that only the patient can do for themselves. So helping them to guide them to understand that in a gentle way, where they feel safe to explore these emotions, is another tool that's really helpful.
Well, I'd like to remind our listeners that you're listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and my guest today is naturopathic physician and licensed acupuncturist, Dr. Dawn Siglain, and she's right here in Huntington at Inner Source Health, so a wonderful resource for our community. So, Dr. Dawn, get a little bit more specific. So, what kind of supplements, nutrients, and dietary changes, for instance, might you recommend for someone who does find they're having an issue such as bipolar?
So a lot of, I definitely like to use, lab testing to get to the core of the problem, as well as any clinical presentation that can be there. So I don't know if I can mention tests that I use here, but I can generalize it, that there's one that's a dried urine test to test neurotransmitters, hormones, and cortisol. So that's a great test to give me a snapshot to look at the biochemistry of the patient to see what's going on, in addition to regular lab work that I might run inflammatory markers, because could it be a deficiency? Could it be an excess of something? Could it be cortisol?
That's what's different. Let me just jump in here. That is what's different about a naturopathic evaluation, because you do the regular conventional blood tests, but then you go beyond, because you're looking for why is this happening, which I think is not addressed in mainstream conventional medicine.
Yeah, and there's a long list of it, because then, could it be inflammatory, or could it be the gut? There's the whole brain and gut connection. So seeing, if they're having normal bowel movements, all the ways that the body needs to process, to ingest and digest and then excrete, and make sure all that's working, because if that's the root of the problem, you get things moving and the body's processing. And then also, what are they ingest? What's their diet like? What's their nutrition? What's going in? What's feeding them? What's feeding their cells? Are they drinking enough water? I mean, there's a ton of things. And so pretty much with our visit, the first visit's 90 minutes long, and I'll ask. It'll be a long medical
How big
history.
is that? How long is a doctor's visit in a conventional office, even for a situation as complex as that? 8 minutes?
Right, 50,
You're
50,
talking about 90 minutes.
Yeah, 90
which
minutes.
Which is like so realistic.
And honestly, the 90 minutes flies by. Sometimes I'm like, oh, okay. Because the conversation can go, you really get to know your patients. I like to say I always put the care back into healthcare because I care for my patients, and there's so many questions. And the patients ultimately, they have the answers for me. I just have to uncover it, really. So that's
and also
where,
they have to be willing to do the work, because although you might give them some supplements, and you can certainly mention specific ones, not brands, but what you might choose, it's not going to be take this pill and that's going to do it.
No. No, yeah, there's so many ways. And at first, it always starts with nutrition. And I like to cook for myself and make food delicious and fun and healthy for you. So I'm always making posts about it. I'll reference it with my patients, but I like to give them a lot of options. So I give them specific nutrition for them. So, and I give them lots of options with that. And then I also might point out things to avoid if that pertains to the patient as well. But what I like to stress with my practice is to add in the good. I like to just add in the good because that's naturally just going to weed out the bad.
Oh, what a nice way to put it. Right. If you fill up on vegetables, you're not going to be so hungry for that, donut.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, and that's what it's about. Because if you tell, think about a little kid, and humans, we're just all, little kids that grew up, but the little child's inside of us. So someone tells you not to do something, and you're just sort of going to want to, and then you feel like you're deprived of it. So I want them to want to do what I'm suggesting to them, not feeling like they should have to. So really creating that shift, is the whole basis for the healing, if they want to do that. And then after nutrition, I focus on lifestyle. So I say I give a lot of homework to my patients, and I meet them where they're at. I always ask, does this resonate with you? I'll give them options, and then, or maybe I'll just, list what I'm thinking and share with them as it resonates for them. And then the next visit we'll follow up and see what worked for them or what didn't, and then I can help them along. A lot of times it's going back to these recommendation plans to guide them towards the healing. And then supplementation, of course, based on any deficiencies that might present in lab work or clinically when I see them. So
And you address so many different kinds of health issues, including things like you talking about now, mental health, autoimmune, pulmonary, renal conditions. It's really just like a physician would do, but your viewpoint is going to be a deeper dive into what's going on with that person, who they are, what is their lifestyle, what are they putting in their mouth, what kind of stress is going on in their life. And it seems that is so ignored in mainstream conventional medicine.
Yeah. And then, ironically, I had my own health issues, which I had an issue with autoimmune condition that got ignited, and it reached to a point where I couldn't ignore it right in the middle of med school. And with the help of what I knew what I needed to do for myself, as well as some colleagues, and I was going to the clinic there at school, I was able to reverse one of my markers and reverse the condition. And then I had another pulmonary issue as well, where I had to heal myself. Because conventional medicine wasn't giving me the options to heal it. So I'm very interested in autoimmune and chronic inflammation as that being the root cause of it, and then also supporting pulmonary issues. There aren't a lot of doctors out there who are focusing on that and to recognize it. So that is very near and dear to my heart as well. Those two areas.
Well, hold that thought, Dr. Dawn. We're going to go for a little break. And listeners, you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Listen live online at nccradio.org or on iHeartRadio. For more information on today's guest or topic, email us at whpc@ncc.edu. Stay tuned. Herbally Yours will be right back.
90.3 WHPC reminds you that when your loved ones need help getting around, you're more than just a daughter or a son. You're their driver, personal shopper, and financial manager. And then before you know it, you're their cook, personal assistant, physical therapist, and even nurse. When you start taking care of a loved one, you don't realize the challenge of playing so many roles. AARP understands the many roles you play, and to help, they've created an online caring resource center for the over 42 million caregivers in the U.S. who are caring for a parent or loved one. At aarp.org/caregiving, you can find local resources and connect with experts and the caregiving community. Better care for ourselves and the ones we love. Visit aarp.org/caregiving to find resources. Brought to you by AARP, the Ad Council, and the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
And thank you for joining us once again right here on Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse. You can find me at naturalnurse.com. And today, our guest is wonderful doctor, and she's right here, which is so great, right in our area. And, you know, a lot of naturopaths practice in other states, but Dr. Dawn is right here, and she is a licensed acupuncturist as well as a naturopathic physician, and you can find out more at innersourcehealth.com. Now, one thing that you're doing, I know you're very active with all kinds of things, is you will be presenting at the upcoming Naval Expo. That's where people can find this, Naval, Navel, Expo, EXPO.com. That's where you can find all this information. They're calling it something else now, SCHO, but nonetheless, it's navalexpo.com. I will be lecturing there, and you will be lecturing there. And I was very interested in your topic, Dr. Dawn. It's called Raw Food Bad Mood. Are your nutritional habits undermining your emotional state? I love that because after years and years, I think raw foods can be nice and therapeutic used appropriately, but I am not someone who thinks everyone needs to jump full steam into that raw food bandwagon, and I think that it can create a lot of health issues.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a topic. Often I'll give lectures about it, and we'll be talking, and I'll be talking about optimal digestion, and if you're having digestive issues, all the way to support that digestive fire. So, but what I always love to say is, if you have no digestive issues, meaning you don't have gas and bloating, your bowel movements are good, you feel fully evacuated after it, then go ahead and eat your raw food because they're nutrient dense, they're wonderful, they're just the way that nature brought them into this world. But what's happening because of all the, whether it be inflammation and inflammatory situations that people are finding themselves in, or poor food choices that have caused some havoc within their gut, if they're not able to digest properly, then they need to support that digestive fire. And
now that's an interesting concept, because what I know is if you're using that word, you are trained, as you well are, in ancient traditional medical theories such as Ayurvedic medicine, where they talk about digestive fire. They even have a name for it, Agni. And also in traditional Chinese medicine, they'll talk about it that way. And they're always saying there's a balance. There's a time for raw, there's a time for cooked. And I think this raw food movement really can do a lot of damage to people.
Yeah, and so I actually was learning this. It was acupuncture class, and they were talking about the digestive fire. And I was sitting there, and I would always bring myself salads. I put them in the glass jars, and that's what I would eat at school. And then always a few hours after lunch, I'd always have this bloating. I feel really uncomfortable. And I should have known better, but I just kept thinking salad's healthy for me. So we're learning about that. And then I said, and learning about how my digestion was a little off. So I needed to support it by lightly cooking my food and having some soups. You think about when you're sick, and chicken soup is always good for you. And the main component for it being so good for you is it's a broth, which is healing for the gut as well, but it's warm in nature. So your stomach doesn't have to work that hard to break it down in order to digest it. So you give your stomach a break and you let that fire just keep burning and letting it move through. And you compare with Chinese medicine and the stomach being heating in that sense, but also Western medicine, and the stomach's acidic. It's an acidic environment. So they can play off of each other. So it matches up there, which
so
makes a lot of sense.
Wouldn't you say a more balanced approach is more appropriate, such as some cooked food, some raw food, and then depending on the person, the situation, the dysbiosis or disease they're suffering from, the weather, there's a lot that goes into that decision.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. So what I would say, so that was one of the things when I thought about the raw food. So I call it the raw food sandwich. So, but it's like if someone's really down and out, their digestive fire is burning out because let's say they're having a smoothie for breakfast, a salad for lunch and dinner, and then God forbid they're eating ice cream or some gelato at night. I mean, that's all cooling food, and you are just extinguishing that fire. And if food's not going to go down, it's going to go out, and there's all this bloating, and it causes a lot of problems there. But let's say someone's not in that extreme state. They want the warm food, so what do they do with sushi? You have a cup of miso soup first, then you have the sushi. You might even put wasabi on it, which is heating, and then you have the pickled ginger over it. So you've got that heat over, the sushi there to let it digest. So I recommend that to patients. I say, if you want to have your salad, you just want it. What I've done for myself is I end up sautéing my salad when I was having these digestive issues. So that's how I was able to still get the food that I want, but I slightly heated it, and then voila, I didn't have any digestive issues. But I'll recommend to patients, if they do want that salad, but let's say they don't want to sauté it, then have some hot tea or have a cup of soup first. Have your salad and then have some warm tea, perhaps some ginger tea, because ginger is warming in nature, and that often will help patients through also.
What a balanced approach. I want you to know, listeners, that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamai, the natural nurse, and today my guest is Dr. Dawn, and she will be lecturing coming up shortly. Check out Naval Expo. You can request a free printed magazine or see the magazine online, and you can also come there. It is on Long Island, and you can find Dr. Dawn all the time by going to innersourcehealth.com. So what would you recommend to people, let's say, in terms of supplements to help digestion?
Well, you always want to think of, based on how they are digesting and what their symptoms are, repairing the gut. So first of all, we want to remove what could be causing the issues. So if they're reacting to any food, then we can consider leaky gut. So it's not necessarily, the food's not the issue. I mean, it is the issue, but it's not the real issue. The foods cause this inflammation, and now the gut lining, the integrity of the gut lining isn't tight. It's not these tight junctions. So proteins, that means that the proteins in the food are slipping through these little pockets that are forming within the intestines. So you want to remove these foods that are causing this inflammatory situation first. So we want to bring light to gluten, which is very inflammatory, and dairy, which could be inflammatory as well. Whatever it could be that it's typically probably the person's eating a lot of it. So have a talk with them and saying, let's remove it, at least, and then just tell them, let's remove it for a few weeks there. That's called the Elimination Diet. And if they end up having relief from it, they're naturally just going to want to avoid those foods. So we see, I work with that first. Then it's all about repairing the gut. So there's supplementation that can have a nice blend of herbs for that. A nice tea, like a slippery elm tea, can be very healing for them. Something like bone broth is a great one that I love to recommend. It's very healing. It has something called N-butyrate in it, which is healing for the distal portion of the intestines particularly also. So it really provides that healing, throughout the gut that they need. So there's a bunch of things. And the beautiful thing also is that if someone doesn't like the tinctures, then we can find a lovely capsule for them. And then there's also the teas. So, wherever the patient is comfortable with, we can do that. And then just encourage, it's just what are they putting in? What are all the good things that would be good for them? And that a lot of that would be a lot of soups and broths would be really healing and providing that information to them. So it's all about, educating and supporting the patient, through all of that.
Yeah, so true. And, there are patients, the things that sometimes I have to start them with is buy a pot. Because there are so many people, especially in their 30s and 40s, who have never cooked. They only eat out, or they buy prepared stuff that they warm in the microwave. That's just actually true.
Yeah. So that's why I love, giving the options and showing them picture. Or, I will just flat out give them the recipes. I'll print that out. It'll be see attached, and they'll have all these sheets, of recipes to go to. Or I'll send them to my Instagram also, which has the pictures there with the recipes. So I like to give them at least, one or two recipes that they can walk away with and try. And I always get feedback from them, so I know that people are trying it, and they like to be, people like to be guided towards what's good for them. So I enjoy doing that for them. And then also, you think about mindfulness while eating also. Everyone's eating in a rush, so I look at the stress component is huge with patients, and it affects their health. So there's that whole component of sit down when you're eating, relax, really let your parasympathetic system, which is the rest and digest, really let it work, and whether it's relaxing to sit by yourself, away from the computer, do that. If you enjoy time by yourself, or if you want to eat with a friend or a loved one, that's also nurturing for yourself as well. So you're having this great conversation, gives you plenty of time to chew your food. Chewing is the huge part. You get that amylase that's starting right, in your mouth and breaking down all those foods. You need all of that. So the enzymes help to break down all the food for your digestive tract, and you're relaxing. And then that way the body's able to absorb, all those nutrients. And then also the mindfulness of when you cook for yourself, put a little love into the food. That's a secret ingredient to everything, why Mom's cooking's always so good. So you put a little love into the food. And so true. While you're eating it.
You probably do know, because you're a naturopathic physician, that actually chicken soup has been scientifically studied to decrease both the incidence and longevity of colds and flus.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's this ancient, soup. Everyone's always hearing about it, but there's something to it. Yeah. Chicken soup certainly is. And then it's all about Mom putting all of her love into it. She's slicing up the celery to add to it, or the onions, whatever it is. And I remember I had a friend who lived in San Diego, and she always used to say her mom used to make the noodles herself. So these homemade noodles. So she used to do it for herself. And what was funny was a stress relief for her was making this homemade chicken noodle soup. That was her mom's recipe. And so just making the soup would make her feel better. And it was that piece of home and, that piece for Mom. And she had that love. And she was probably feeling the love from her mom when she was making it. And so just making it, and then she was able to eat that and then ingest all of that love.
And for the modern life people like ourselves working all the time, I only have like one day a week that I'll cook soups, then let them cool and put individual in glass dishes in the freezer, so you always have it available. And for my children, they even, who are in their 40s now, probably older than you, actually had it available as a snack.
That's great, yeah. Yeah, I love the glass containers, and they're always...
We are actually at the end of our time together, Dr. Dawn. Could you give a shout-out, tell us how to get in touch with you, and just any last words you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you can read more about Inner Source Health at www.innersourcehealth.com. I have an office in Huntington, New York. I'm also in the New York City location, a block from Penn Station, on Tuesdays. You can also check me out on Instagram at Dr. Dawn ND, DRDAWN-ND. And I'm also open to free 15-minute consultations. You can give a call here at the office, 631-421-1848. Would love to meet you and talk with you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for listening once again to Herbal Yours, produced in the studios of 90.3 WHPC, Nassau Community College, Garden City, New York. For further information, email whpc@ncc.edu. This is your host, Ellen Kamai at naturalnurse.com, inviting you to join us next week for another edition of Herbal Yours. Until then, stay healthy.